Rest in the presence and hold space.
Jai Ganesha Gananatha Dayaniti Sakala Vignakara Dura Hamari. Jai Ganesha Gananatha Dayaniti Sakala Vignakara Dura Hamari.
Namaste.
Namaste. Welcome.
Welcome to our weekly online satsang. It's good to have you here. Tonight, today, whatever time it is, wherever you are, it's so important that we come together, those of us that are on the path of awakening and the flowering of the heart, that we connect energetically and share presence, the presence with one another. It strengthens us exponentially. Community is an essential part of the process of flowering and growth in the spirit. Even though everything you need for the journey is already inside of you. It's one of the things that we emphasize in the Flowering Heart community, is that deep within your spiritual heart is the divine source itself, is the entire universe within you. Rumi, the great Sufi mystic, said, we're not drops of the ocean. We are the entire ocean in a drop. And we are the entire Godhead. We are the infinite expanse of divine space and consciousness inside of us. So it's all there. So many times we've spent years looking for something outside of ourselves or someone outside of ourselves that we considered enlightened who could maybe give us what they had, not knowing that we had it already and that the outer world is a reflection of the inner world. So an awakened being is simply a mirror reflecting to you your own awakened essence. So sooner or later we need to make that journey inside and discover the divine within. As soon as that connection's made, our hearts, our spiritual hearts, begin to blossom and flower, hence our name, Flowering Heart Center and the Flowering Heart community. We're not an organization with formal membership. People join us for these satsangs from all over the world, from other countries, other continents, from other spiritual teachers, teachings, and belief systems. But we have something in common that is greater than anything else that could distinguish us in terms of different beliefs or patterns or spiritual practices. in that we're sharing that process of awakening and flowering. Such a beautiful thing. And it is essential to the world right now. The solution to the world's problems that has people so baffled and so many people so frightened is for humanity to awaken to our true nature, our true essence, because we're more than just family, us humans. We are one being, a supreme being that is expressing itself through the universe, through all the myriad forms of creation. But in our case, through 7.5 billion weirdos, human beings, who are so eccentric and so varied. And yet, if we go deep enough inside and awaken there, we discover that we are the same being. That the one who's looking at you through my eyes is the one that's looking back at me through your eyes. When we awaken to our essential oneness, we are immediately, unconditionally in love with one another. And that love dissolves fear. So essential in the world today. And when enough of us awaken and the collective consciousness shifts, we can cease protecting an insane global civilization that's rooted in competition, conflict, and violence. And we can begin to spontaneously give birth to a new world civilization rooted in cooperation instead of competition, harmony instead of conflict, and peace instead of violence and war. And all that's required is that we awaken. Now that's a tall order, but so many of us are awakening today. That's rippling out through the collective consciousness. And though we haven't seen the collective itself shift in a significant enough way to change the world, we are seeing that the path of awakening is becoming much more accessible and much more graceful, much more filled with ease for those who are on the path. 50 years ago, it was a much rockier journey. It was much more of a roller coaster ride if you were on the path of awakening. As more and more of us are awakening, it's becoming easier for others to join us in that process. And eventually, we'll come to a point where the scale, the teeter-totter shifts from ignorance and darkness to light, awakening, and love and oneness. And we're on the way. Satsangs like this are part of that process, and using the internet makes it so much easier for us to connect across long distances and cultural and national boundaries that people have erected, and these days are trying so hard to keep everybody apart. And all that's rooted in fear, whether it's triggered by this or that, by political ideologies or pandemics or whatever philosophical differences. There are forces at work in our world that are maybe, I don't even know if it's intentional. Some people think it is, but these forces are at work to make us afraid of one another and feel that we need to keep our distance and erect barriers, and that's the way we're going to be safe. Actually, however that may be true in some ways, those barriers and boundaries that keep our hearts walled off from one another, that keep us from realizing that we are each other, so we can dump the fear and blossom in global, universal, unconditional love, those boundaries have to be dissolved. And so that's really what this is about. To that end, at Flowering Heart Center, we offer various processes besides the satsangs online and the ones we do on Wednesday night here at the center physically. We offer from time to time workshops and courses to help facilitate the journey for many people. Something that is present in, I think, virtually all of our processes is the Flowering Heart Blessing. And this is something that you're soaking in right now, and it will continue through the entire satsang and beyond. And that is a transmission of divine grace, of divine energy and divine consciousness, which is enlightenment itself. That energy, that consciousness is reaching you wherever you are right now and saturating you. The Flowering Heart Blessing is something that the Divine revealed to me and Suzanne over 6 years ago and said, begin to share this blessing with people. We've been involved in spiritual transmissions of grace and consciousness and energy for many decades. But the Divine said, I want you to begin to offer this one. It's very heart-centered. It's about awakening the awareness of our fully enlightened and fully divine essence within. And the beauty of that is that we don't get stuck on things outside of ourselves. But the Divine said, this is a free gift from me. It doesn't come through any particular master. It does not belong to you and Suzanne. It does not belong to any saint or any hierarchy or organization. It's mine. And I'm giving it freely. So do the same. Give it freely. Don't charge for it. And when people receive this blessing, which everyone that joins us tonight and everyone that will be tuning in to this satsang in the days ahead is instantly activated and initiated for this blessing to flow through them. The Divine does it. All you have to do is invite the Divine to pour the Flowering Heart Blessing through you for someone or someone's else. You can hold that person or those people in your heart in prayer or in meditation. Or if you're in the physical presence of another person that wants to receive it, should be with informed consent, you can do it from across the room because you're not really doing it, or you can gently, and this is our preferred way of doing this, is to gently lay your hands on the receiver's head and just invite the Divine to pour the blessing through you. The blessing is the Divine itself, the Divine presence and the Divine grace. So it's nothing you or I are doing except offering ourselves as instruments for the Divine to use us to pour grace through us to others. That's still that connection between human beings, even though I started out saying everything you have is already inside of you. It seems that we already have inside of us becomes activated over time as we connect with and receive grace through others. So please, throughout this webcast, join us in sending, pouring out, flowing out the Flowering Heart Blessing to all the participants in this satsang. And as I like to mention each week, if you come from another spiritual community or teacher that has its own form of blessing or Diksha or Shaktipat, if it's a gift from the Divine to catalyze awakening in the receiver and the flowering of the heart, then please feel free to share your blessing with us here tonight, and we're glad you're here. I don't think we have any announcements tonight.
The replay of yesterday. Anybody missed it?
Yesterday we did our monthly interfaith communion with the Cosmic Christ. It's interfaith, it's open to people of all faiths to experience the presence and the grace of the Cosmic Christ, which is an eternal divine aspect that Christians believe incarnated through Jesus of Nazareth. But the Cosmic Christ is that divine grace that resides at the center of everyone and everything. In India, I think a good name for the Cosmic Christ is Paramatma, which means supreme being, and that's often understood in India as the supreme being that resides in the spiritual heart of each and every one of us. So we had that celebration yesterday, and the focus of it was a new earth, 12 fruits of the tree of life, which is an interesting meditation. And we discussed so many things. The imagery of the tree of life and the 12 fruits of the tree of life, the new earth, which we hear a lot about these days, right from the mouth and the incredible visionary gift of St. John, the beloved apostle, the New Jerusalem descending, what earth will be like when it is fully transformed. And when we are fully transformed, spirit, soul, and body, and there is no more death, no more darkness, no more decay, and the light of this world will be the light of the divine itself. I think you might find it inspiring if you didn't. Tune in, the recording's up there. As are the recordings of archived recordings of all of the communions with the Cosmic Christ we've done over the last several years, as are all of the Monday night satsangs and some other things. So all of that is archived in our account at Vimeo, which is under, what name is it under? It's under some name. Oh, it's under Flowering Heart Michael Milner. If you were to go to Vimeo and try to find the archives, it would all be there. You could also just scroll back on the Facebook page, but you'd be going back, you'd have to scroll through pages and pages. But all of the recordings that we have transmitted through Facebook Live remain archived here. So you're welcome to share those. We like to open this to questions for the next several minutes. Questions that you might have, areas about the spiritual journey, about awakening, about God realization, about meditation, about your spiritual practice, what you have to look forward to. We can look at things like reincarnation, ascension, transformation, anything that relates to the spiritual journey and best to your own personal experience, something that you'd like light shined on, clarity. And when you throw out a question like that in a satsang group, the divine inspires insight and answers that bless all of us. So that's a really important part you could play in the satsang tonight and in any of the satsangs that you participate in. Then later on, after the questions and answers, we'll focus on some deep blessings by intention for the personal needs that you've brought with you tonight, either for you personally, for family members, friends, or those that you're just holding in your heart. And we'll all agree together and ask the divine to send a powerful outpouring of the Flowering Heart blessing grace to release miracles in your life. And then we'll conclude with the open eye light meditation at the end. But feel free to pour out any questions. I already see, and thank you for your comments.
What did the comments say?
Well, hello, Joanne said hello. And she also said, yesterday was a great service. Thank you. And a couple other namastes and highs. And John says...
Hold on, before you go on to John, I just want to comment real quick on yesterday's service.
Sure.
Thanks for bringing that up, Joanne. Today I've been meditating on it, and I think I'm going to probably go back and watch the replay a couple more times, but it really drove home about how we're not getting the fruits of life because we're not being what I've been working on today is being more honest about, what words am I having, what thoughts am I having, and I'm usually pretty conscious of this, but even just catching little slips, am I judging somebody else driving, am I judging the way somebody's walking, or, and it heightened my resolve. That service was so good, it heightened my resolve to go even deeper on the spiritual path and be more honest with myself on how can I be more kind, how can I be more compassionate, how can I be more present in the moment instead of up in the mind, which is all criticism and judgment and blame. And when we were sitting here meditating at the beginning, I've been mulling this over all day long and having some ahas, and where can I be more grateful for things in our lives. And we were driving, I drove past a new laundromat, and it just, in my heart, I feel so grateful that I have a washing machine and a dryer. And then I just started doing this inventory while we were driving, like a 20-minute drive, on how much we have to be grateful for, and how if we're feeling down about something, just to, be grateful that we can even embark on this spiritual journey together. And when we were meditating at the beginning, my third eye was so active, it was just really intense, and then the sides of my brain started moving, and I was in such a deep state, it was hard to pull out of it. But with that deep state, there was like this expansion. It's almost like the service yesterday is somehow rewiring my brain just by setting the intention, the intention that I want to grow in that direction, and that I want to be more of a light in this world, and to please help me with the obstacles that are helping me to be there. So I'd highly encourage, if you haven't watched the webcast, to watch it and meditate on it. It's just been a day since we had it, and I've had a lot to chew on, and I feel like there's a lot of breakthroughs happening. I don't know what they are yet, but thank you for that great service yesterday. Yeah, I know, it was inspired.
Take the spirit.
Right.
We hear a lot of talk about the new earth, but what's our vision of it?
Right.
Do we have any clue? It's beyond our comprehension where we're headed. But John pulls back the veil a bit. Mm-hmm. And lately we've been going, what next? What next? and what the divine has been saying to us is there's not a need right now for the next big thing. Some new blessing, some new course of new practices. What's needed is to go deeper. And I think that's what that was pointing to, the qualities of a flowering heart and how they evolve into something that's transforming us in the world.
And I've been feeling so powerfully the last couple years. I know I've shared it with you guys a lot, but that we just really need to hold fast to our spiritual process, and to, connecting and being in the present moment. But yesterday was a really powerful meditation on kind of a roadmap, or these are the steps that you take, and this leads to this, which leads to this, which leads to this. And when you meditate on those, it helps our mind shift, our heart shift, our focus, our awareness.
Well, that's the purpose of meditation in Scripture. If we talk about Bhakti Yoga, there are, in one of the main schools of Bhakti that a lot of us have been exposed to, there are 9 levels of Bhakti. But the first one is listening, hearing the divine word, which kind of begins to seed us and awaken that. It's the words that come through a divine being, whether it's Krishna, or whether we're talking about Christ, or a being like a great Buddha, Kuan Yin, any great divinely realized being. Those words have an effect that sows seeds in us, and we may not even get it when we're listening, right, which is why it keeps working on us afterwards.
Right.
I'm gonna. John threw me a bit of bait, which is
okay.
He's just got a gift for this, but I'm gonna run with it. John says, I haven't watched yesterday's entire service as of yet. Michael has a tendency to put me to sleep. A very restful sleep. Okay. All right, great. I guess you must have needed sleep. There are a couple of ways to look at the tendency to fall asleep when I'm expounding the divine word. When I first started out, so many years ago, as a young spiritual teacher, I got up in front of a group of people, and here, most of the folks, their eyes were just like lit, and they were just focused, and I could see the lights going off in them. But then there's this guy, on the front row, and as soon as I would open my mouth, he'd be... Now, of course, the human message there is you're just boring as hell. I've heard this stuff and you just bore me. Or you're just coming from your head. One of my teachers years and years ago was a minister, and he came out of church, and his wife said, that was a very nice talk, honey. And he just shriveled because he knew what that meant. That wasn't the fiery, preaching, expounding, prophetic word that he was hoping he was bringing for a nice talk, honey. So this guy, he kept passing out, and it wasn't just once. He came back several times, and he just slept there. And it wasn't just that he fell asleep, and I'm having this insecure feeling that I'm really quite boring, but he snored. So he gave everybody the message that I couldn't even keep this guy awake, and I tried, And it was all ego where I was coming from, because I was insecure. And the divine spoke to me and said, this guy is worn out. He's really tired. And what he needs right now, what he really needs is, what John said, a very restful peace. He needed that. And so because when the anointed word, when a divine word or teaching goes forth, then there's a certain unction or presence of the divine presence with the word. And some people, especially I've noticed over the years, those who have
apnea,
sleep apnea or difficulty sleeping, when they get in the presence, you could just see the peace go over them. They go out. And some of them have been very frustrated with that and talked to me about it. They don't want to. But the divine told me years ago that when that happens, there are two possibilities. One is that person really, really needs the rest and the refreshing of a kind of samadhi, where they're actually dissolving in the presence and just resting in the presence, and everything they need is being transmitted directly to their heart. It doesn't matter they didn't hear what Michael Milner or somebody else had to say. It's what the presence wanted to give them. Now, there's another take on this, which I've also seen many times over the years, is that some of us at certain points in our lives have a certain block to hearing something that we really need to hear. And the mind is really, really good at distracting us from being able to receive that. And one of the ways is, we judge it. Because the ego will judge anything that is impactful, because the ego doesn't want to go away. The mind will critique and judge anything that challenges it. So that's one thing that happens. If you notice yourself sitting there, grumble, 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 taking notes about what's wrong with this teaching and why I don't agree with it, maybe it's good to just listen and take it in, and recognize that there is that in us. But the full force effect of it is that the ego or the separate self will actually knock us out so that we actually are not present. And so that's very different than what's happening when the Holy Spirit or the divine presence is like dissolving you in the mindless samadhi. Now, John, I'm sure you were just getting zapped, by the divine. But when that does happen, and it will happen in many of our lives over the years at certain times, it's good to ask the divine to show us and give us discernment. And if it is that thing where I've had friends, they couldn't pick up a divine text and begin to read the divine word, whether we're talking about the Bible or the Tao Te Ching or the Bhagavad Gita, they couldn't read it without just instantly falling asleep and not being able to continue. Now that is a spiritual force that's getting in the way. And that needs to be cleared, and the divine presence will help us do that, to stay tuned in and receive what it is that we're there to receive. So that's my response to that. Thank you, John. Sometimes your triggers trigger actually some good discussions, I think, and insights. And John's got a great sense of humor, for those of you that don't know him. And some of the comments he shares are tinged with that humor. It's great. Love you, John.
And don't feel bad. We have a couple in the room yesterday that were fallen asleep too.
One of them was the sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea, right.
And the other one was just bored to death.
Maybe.
They both are, I don't know, but yeah, it happens. So John writes, the monks in China were instrumental in bringing tea to China from India. They realized it kept them awake during meditation. Okay, yep, it's true. And further, you know where coffee came from? Well, the Ethiopians used coffee beans to get jazzed up with caffeine before they went into battle. But when the Sufi mystics came there, the Islamic Sufi missionaries, I don't know how they got it, but they discovered about roasting coffee beans. And that when they drank coffee in the early morning, it gave them energy and zeal for dhikr, which is the Sufi practice of chanting the divine names. So it became part of their tradition to use coffee to help energize the early morning meditations, where, of course, many of us trying to meditate in the early morning fall back asleep. And I've heard Tibetan monks say the same thing. I need some coffee to have compassion for meditation this morning. So tea is probably a better idea, which is why the Chinese monks were, got the tea from India and brought it to China. Okay. And John continues, on Saturday I spent much of the day just at peace, rest, and sleep. It was just something that happens every once in a while. Okay. So, it's interesting that we've ended up talking about sleeping when the subject is awakening. You've got to be asleep to awaken. Okay, any other questions?
Well, the nice part is you're aware of it, If we're just asleep and not aware that we're asleep, then that's counterproductive to awakening.
It's true, and it's a great thing to get the insight that we're not awakened fully. I mean, we may have awakened to certain truths that are beyond normal reality. We may have realized that we're not a mind and a body, that we are a spirit being. And that in our essence we're so much more. But for the most part, most of us are still living in the dream most of the time. And when we realize that, then we can begin to call out to the divine for grace to awaken us. See, if we have not yet awakened to some aspect of reality, then we don't know what it is, because we're not aware of it. So how can you know what to ask for? But when you begin to see that, hey, I'm kind of asleep here, part of me is asleep, then we can ask divine grace to awaken us to possibilities and realities that we may have only glimpsed or never even glimpsed.
We just watched a really great movie this week on Netflix. It's called A Boy Called Christmas, and I would highly recommend it. But what was that line that they said when he ran into the elves? The boy said, "That's impossible." And they were very alarmed. We don't say that here.
We don't use that word here.
We don't use that word here. And he said, "My dear boy," I want to get it right. Nothing is impossible. There's just possibilities that you've not yet realized. Right. Yeah.
What you think of as impossible are simply possibilities you have not yet realized.
Yeah, that was a really good line. It's a good reminder to me too, because we're all still growing on so many levels, on different ways, on different capacities for compassion and being self-aware of when we're not being there. And so, yeah, That was a great line. Good movie. Highly recommend it. Family friendly. Good for the whole family to watch.
Indeed, I think you'll enjoy it. It's got some real spiritual messages in it too. Well, I think of it, if you're here, or you come into this satsang at any time, whatever day it is, if you give us a like or a love, down at the bottom there's a heart or a thumbs up. That would be really great, because then we'll know you were here. Otherwise, if you don't leave a comment, we won't know that you were here. And when we see that you were here, we remember that, and we read through the names at the end, and there's a special connection. So we just appreciate that. And John, Ekaterina says, I'll watch it. Okay, yeah. John says, I've been told you can continue meditation and sleep. Absolutely you can.
Some of my biggest spiritual downloads have been, I feel like I'm asleep, but I'm still awake, and that space in between wake and sleep. And I feel like guides are helping me to see a different level of dimension or life, and usually leads to some kind of a breakthrough.
There's so many kinds of meditation. And a lot of times we talk about meditating on something. Now, if you give enough energy to that over time, like a mantra, you might wake up in the middle of the night and hear, Om Mani Padme Hum going through you, because you've chanted it 8 jillion times. It's become automatic, a spontaneous meditation of the heart. In Eastern mystical Christianity, there's something called the Jesus Prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, which in this case means mercy is like grace. Pour grace out on me. Lord Jesus, pour grace out on me. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me. Well, people pray that in the Eastern Church, like Catholics pray the Rosary. Monks pray that prayer, the hesychasts. The mystics of Eastern Christianity, especially Russian Orthodoxy, are called hesychasts, followers of the path of hesychasm. Chasm means cave, chasm, a chasm. And hesych is the root word for heart. So it's talking about the flowering heart. It's talking about the mysticism of diving deep into the heart. And they call on the name of Christ over and continuously in the heart. Well, that eventually becomes automatic. And one of the ways that, and not just monks, but lay people that do this practice know that it's actually taken hold, the ceaseless prayer of the heart, is they'll wake up in the middle of the night and their mind might be thinking about something else, but they hear it going inside endlessly and effortlessly. Now, I don't think it has to be with a seed like a mantra or the Jesus prayer. It could be spontaneous and imageless meditation. I mean, what is meditation anyway? We could say it's, what would we say?
This, that, and the other?
Well, for some people, it's observing the breath. For some people, it's working with the kundalini or the internal energy. For some people, it's visualization. For some people, it's an intention with visualization and mantra or prayer. But actually, if we simplified it, meditation is just being aware of awareness. It's not being aware of things. It's not being aware of the body. It's not being aware of the mind. It's not being aware of all the phenomena going by, which mindfulness uses and to a good end. But ultimately, what meditation is freedom from being aware of things and trying to change things and adapt to things and cope with things and work with things, to just being aware of awareness. When we stop being hung up on all the stuff floating by in the mind, what we discover is behind all the stuff is vast, clear space, unbounded, pure awareness. That's the thing. That's that one being we were talking about that is our true essence. And so meditation is whatever practice you employ in the beginning to free you from being distracted and occupied with thoughts and feelings and images and charges and all that stuff. And to let all that go and to begin to be aware of the space behind it, the space it's floating in, and just meditate on the awareness itself and not on the stuff that you could be aware of. And when that happens, I believe that meditation becomes spontaneous and effortless, and it permeates everything we do. Life is meditation, and if that is the case, then so is sleep. That something inside of you is constantly aware of and meditating on the presence. And that's a great way to get there, incidentally, is to rest in the presence. And just keep meditating on the presence, not on what you're feeling about the presence or what the presence is doing for you or just the presence, which is peace, which is love, which is spacious, timeless, boundless, nameless, beyond all comprehension. So, yep, nice. If there are any other questions.
Look at the other comments.
Well, Linda said, thank you, love it all. Catherine said, I'll watch it.
Okay, nice.
Let me just check and see if anyone posted. Okay, very good. Well then, it's time for the deeper intent blessings. So I'd like to invite you, as the music gently plays, to close your eyes and invoke the presence. Tune in to your heart of hearts within. And just rest in the presence. If you begin to tune into the space between your breaths, it's an open door into that vast mystery I was speaking of. When you inhale and take a full breath, let your awareness rise to the top of your head and hold your breath for a few moments. Before you exhale, feel the space opening at the top of your head into infinity. You'll begin to feel yourself being uplifted into transcendent awareness. Relax there at the end of a full inhale, it almost seems like you don't need to breathe for a number of seconds. And then when you exhale slowly and gently, feel yourself float down from that place at the top of your head deep into the heart, the center of your being. And rest at the end of the inhale before you take another breath. At the end of the exhale, feel the center of your being flowering and expanding into infinity from within. The quality of that feeling at the top of your head is somewhat different at the end of the inhale than the space that opens from deep in the center of your being at the end of an exhale. The end of the exhale is a gentle radiance of the heart flowering into open space. At the end of an inhale, at the top of your head, the crown chakra opens into light and ascent. might explore those spatial openings, especially if you've been doing breath work. How about let go of the breath and begin to notice the space between them? Now just rest and receive the flowering heart blessing, the grace of the divine source being poured out to you. This presence is pure unconditional love, non-judgmental. It loves you exactly as you are, unconditionally. And it yearns to bless you, to embrace you, to draw you into oneness on every level of your being with itself. There is no distance. There is no separation. There are no hoops to jump through. There's nothing you need to attain or deserve or achieve. Just receive the divine embrace. Relax, let go, and allow yourself to be drawn into the center of your being. The presence knows exactly what has been burdening you, worrying you, causing suffering to you or others you love. The divine knows exactly what to do about it, and the presence is all-knowing, all-wise, and all-powerful. So simply release that situation, that pain, that charge, that dis-ease to the presence itself, and soak in the healing grace. The awakening, transforming grace of your divine. Imagine us all sitting in a blessing circle together with your eyes closed. You could lift up your hands with your palms open, facing the center of the circle. Just invite, by your pure intention, the divine to pour the flowering heart blessing through you to all the others in the Satsang, as they're doing the same for you. I'd like us all to visualize the planet Earth in the center of our circle. The beautiful blue living planet Gaia. And the intent tonight is for the unconditional, irresistible, all-powerful love of the divine to shine into the hearts of all human beings on earth, to dissipate and to dissolve the fear, to melt away all the fear and the dread in humanity, to ignite the fire of divine love in every heart, to cause all hearts to flower. As we offer ourselves as light workers, as vessels of grace to the world, that light that flows through us to others and to the world heals us, awakens us, and transforms us in the process of flowing through us to others. We can all be very grateful tonight that we have been called and activated to be light workers in this great work. Now you could just relax. And when you're ready, we're going to begin the light meditation. You could open your eyes and begin to make direct eye contact with Suzanne and or me. At least keep looking at one of our eyes. As the light meditation begins, the divine presence floods Suzanne and me with so much grace that oceans of love and light begin to pour through every bit of our being to you, especially through our eyes, for they are the doorways of the soul. There's nothing you need to do but just keep looking at least one of our eyes, and that light will stream in through your eyes into your spiritual heart to cause the fires of awakening, transformation to burn ever brighter within you, to melt away obstacles, to cause your true awakened and divine nature to blossom, to flower, and to shine within you. for a few more minutes as the grace that we've received settles within us. Meditating as long as you want to, or lie down in Shavasana nearby, which is to lie on your back with your eyes closed and your arms loosely at your sides, with your palms open, turned upward, and just let yourself dissolve with gratitude in the presence. I know we are. We love you very much.
Much love, light, and blessings until we connect again.
Until then, the divine within us beholds the divine in you, and we bow to you.
Namaste.